and welcome to Barnstable Today. This week there is the Barnstable Town Council meeting, and we have some interesting news coming up for you. And the first piece of interesting news is that the Barnstable Town Council meeting this week in the month of July will be held at the Knight Auditorium. We're joined by Assistant Town Manager Tom Lynch. And Tom, let's start with the process first. Why is the Town Council meeting in July being held over at the Barnstable High School Knight Auditorium?
Well, there are two controversial issues on the agenda, one being with the sewers and private roads debt exclusion issue, and then the other being a docks and piers moratorium that's been in effect for a while, and there's been a study produced, and so they're deciding whether they're going to move forward on that. So individually, each has filled the hearing room here at Town Hall, so the council president wanted to be safe, and since they're only having the one meeting in July, they wanted to move it over there and be sure they'd be able to hold it on that evening.
Let's start with, they're both tough issues to talk about, and let's talk about the road betterments program, and of course that has to do a lot with the Stewart's Creek Stewarding Project, and that's how it all started, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, the town has been working for a long time on a comprehensive wastewater management plan and trying to put together a plan to expand sewering to get the nitrogen out of our bays and out of our water supply, and to take care of those Title V systems that have been failing. So Stewart's Creek was the first one online, but there's also plans for Long Beach and some of the Craigville beach area that are out there, and Waquaquet Lake came up, and there was a vote on that to kind of stop that project for a while. But the key was that the council president asked for a subcommittee to look at this, because they have to determine what the funding mechanism is going to be, whether there's going to be a betterment, how we are going to fund long-range sewers, and what's the best mechanism to do that. So the subcommittee, headed by Councilor Rugo, did advance a proposal, and that I believe the council is going to try to discuss as a council as a whole, because it's been put into one ordinance, and there are going to be different sections as they move through. So it would be our hope that the councilors could first have debate and discussion on whether or not there'll be a 50% betterment paid for by the individual getting the service, and 50% by the town, or some mixture of that. So I think that Mark Milne, who's the finance director, will be prepared if councils want to debate that and say, well, gee, I think it should be 60-40 or some other amount. Plug that in and say, well, here's how that would affect the formula and what families would have to pay in that area. The second issue that you would then move to, some of the funding mechanisms. It's been proposed that there'd be an increase in the hotel-motel tax and an increase in the meals tax, both of which are local option measures that towns can adopt, and many cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth, since given that power last year by the legislature, have adopted them. Yarmouth and Provincetown and Chatham, a lot of towns have already done that, and so we'll be looking at that issue. But what we'd like to do, if the councils decide that that passes, to dedicate that through council vote to bettering doing the sewers.
The motel hotel tax and the meals tax is, I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about, is over and above what we currently charge on the hotel motel tax and on the meals tax. What percentage of that might it be?
It's a 0.75% increase on the meals tax and a 2% on the rooms. And
it's possible through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that could be dedicated to a specific purpose.
Well, under the debt, it gets a little tricky, but under the way the debt exclusion would work is that each year the council would have to vote a certain amount of appropriation. Now we know that the hotel and motel and meals are going to bring in about 1.6, maybe 1.8 million in total, and they would then dedicate that to paying off whatever bond issue was brought up. The second issue that's combined with within this single ordinance is the whole issue of private roads. And again, there'll be a discussion of, do you want private roads in with this ordinance, or do you want it separate? Should there be a betterment attached to private roads, so that right now, legally, the town can't fix private roads. It's owned separate. We don't own it. We can go in and do emergency repairs, particularly if you can't get a fire truck or emergency response vehicle down there. So we can respond that way. But generally, if a private road wants to be fixed with public dollars, they have to petition the town, and 51% agree to it, and then we can, participate in that process, actually take the road. And there's also ways that we can just fix it, for them. So, but the idea is that we've got a lot of private roads. We get every week we get, citizens writing in saying, my road needs XYZ repairs, and when are you going to come and do this? And when you have 1,100 private roads and they're deteriorating, you've got a big public policy problem that's out there. So the town manager, working with the council, has tried to say, I think we should combine these two. If we're going out for an override, we have a certain amount for, to fix private roads. We're also going to be going and doing sewer work, and we're doing some of that sewer work on private roads. Let's fix the private road at that time. So then after, if we get through that discussion, then we're going to be into, the discussion of, do we do a debt exclusion, which is an override, and what amount will that be? So I think, as you can see, there are very complex issues that the council has to deal with. Now, the council president has kind of said, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. I expect my members to know about it. He's not looking for a lot of presentations, so I think viewers turning in on Thursday, once we start that sewer discussion, there may be a brief discussion on the private roads by, Director of Public Work Mark Ells, but that will probably be brief, and then we're hoping that the council will meet more as a committee of the whole so they can discuss these issues back and forth before they get into offering amendments. Because once you start going through and members offer different amendments, it's going to get a little confusing. So I think the council president's hoping he can get a sense on all those issues we've just outlined.
I don't want to make light of anything because these are serious matters, but as the old saying goes, there's two things that you never want to see, and one of them is making sausage, and the other one is making law. And it sounds like this is going to be a very involved, very intricate meeting on this particular subject.
I think it's going to be a challenge for the council president because he's the parliamentarian, so he's going to have to rely on the town clerk who's taking down the amendments and follow through the procedure. What you want to be careful about is that sometimes when you go lengthy into a debate, as you know, having been a town councilor, as you go lengthy into a debate, someone offers an amendment early on that doesn't get adopted, and then someone comes back and says, what about that? And suddenly that gets in, and it triggers other problems throughout. So I think it's going to be a challenge just to keep it all in order. But I think the council president's up to it, and it should be an interesting evening. And hopefully we'll get to the docks and piers moratorium issue, but I think that's the sewers and private roads is probably the big one that people will be able to watch and be involved with.
And I think you just answered the question I was about to ask you. There will be an opportunity for public comment by the public as well.
Yes, there'll be public comment as we normally have it, and whether the council president will have then public comment when he opens up the ordinance, I would expect he probably would. So there might be a couple of shots at that.
Sure. Now, there will be time permitting because this is the only council. This is the only council meeting that we have in the summertime. But the other issue, of course, is the issue of moratoriums on docks and piers.
Yeah, and I think that, that there's been a presentation before the council on that. We're coming up to the deadline on that in I believe in August. So we wanted to see whether they're going to extend it or whether they're going to adopt the zoning recommendation that was brought forth by that long-term commission that worked on that.
Sounds like the council has a lot of work ahead of them this Thursday night.
I think it's going to be a busy night.
It will. Tom Lynch, the Assistant Town Manager, thank you so much for joining us in Barnstable today.